one of the things that you talk about is you talk about threat levels, and that there are different types of threat levels, and it's important to be aware of them. Could you explain those?
When I went to DoD in sort of late 2011, these were threats that were coming in and were really mainly prevalent at the nation-state level, at the DoD level, at the U.S. level. But now we're seeing these adversaries actually now coming in at the state level, at the corporate level. And it's really three levels of threat. One is actually from true nation states who are looking for intelligence information, they're looking for intellectual property, and you mainly hear individuals talk about Russia and North Korea, Iran, and China. They're the main government-organized groups.
And are they necessarily looking to disrupt, or are they mostly looking to just look around?
Generally, they're looking to look around. They're generally very stealthy. Their objective is to be able to get into the networks, to be able to exfiltrate information without being detected. And you'll see rare instances perhaps where they're disruptive, but in many cases that's sort of a side impact to the fact that they're in the network. The second threat, which is the one I think which is really very, very challenging for corporations as well as for state government level and all of government, are really those organized crime groups that are within those same countries, quite frankly, in some cases, in other countries. Those groups are really much more after financial gain and not so much after necessarily, to your point, disruption.
Right.
The third group is actually the ones that are a little scarier, and they're a combination of your traditional hacktivists who are just in many cases, they want to be disruptive because they want you to know they're there. But what's happening also is that cyber warfare is actually, I shouldn't say inexpensive, but you can go out and you can actually buy tools on the internet to be disruptive. And so you're starting to see some of the fringe groups actually be able to have a cyber impact that doesn't necessarily reflect their status as a nation state, doesn't necessarily reflect their status from an organized crime standpoint, but they can be very disruptive.
So if you were to take all of this and now overlay that onto Internet of Things, where we're talking about connecting devices, things with back-end cloud applications and systems, it does seem like it opens up a whole new door of concerns to have.
From what we've dealt with before, we've really dealt with individuals actually having access, or individuals actually being able to do something. And now we're in a situation where, again, to your point, we're seeing an explosion of devices taking advantage of being able to connect via the internet. Those devices are anything from our own personal capabilities, be they a watch or a Fitbit or any kind of a device, but all the way down to what controls our critical infrastructure. And that's been a concern, I think, for the states, and it's becoming an even greater concern if you look at things like water systems, energy systems, and so on. All of them are now being connected where they before ran on very secure, dedicated systems. They're now being able to take advantage of the benefit of the internet. And with that, and once you start to explode it, from the standpoint of the number of devices. Now it changes the dynamic in terms of how you detect that you have an anomaly, how do you detect what it is that's happening.
The back-end systems that we see today, that these connected devices are talking to, so to speak, are they designed to handle these types of security issues? Are they designed to support the type of scale of numbers of input of information that they're getting?
Many of those systems have been in place a very long time. They were designed and implemented in another era, if you will, from a technology perspective. But if you look at critical infrastructure from an energy, water, and so on, there's a lot of, if you will, technology out there that controls all of that, that does make it very difficult to go out and do large-scale replacement. And so it's going to happen over time, and it's going to happen, based upon what the value is to those critical infrastructure companies.
Could you speak a little bit to how you think this is starting to get into the minds of many of the IT executives right now, and how we need to start thinking about maybe this issue is a little bit closer than we had originally thought?
I think the struggle that many of them are having is, how do you actually articulate that? And how do you answer the question that's being asked in boardrooms across the country, which is, how much should I spend on cybersecurity? How do I really know how much I should be spending to do risk avoidance?
Well, it sounds like one of the things that you're saying too is, first of all, the whole cybersecurity thing is not fixed, it's dynamic. So what is happening today could be will be very different from what's happening tomorrow. So that means it's dynamic, and that one needs to think about security from the get-go when
Absolutely.
you're designing products. And especially, it sounds like what you're saying too, is in Internet of Things, that's especially the case.
Absolutely. Because the threat is evolving. I mean, the quote, bad guys have got enormous resources out there to be able to actually increase the threat, to come up with innovative ways to actually work through it. So I think your point around, it's a journey, it's not a destination. You're never going to be 100% there is absolutely correct.
Does that also mean we need to think about how we deliver some
Yes.
of these services when it comes to how the devices are maybe manufactured, or how they're organized, or the infrastructure or the back-end systems?
Absolutely. I think you've made a very good point in terms of looking from the original design and looking at how do we effectively make sure, in some cases potentially even at the chip level, how can we be sure that, in fact, we can secure that particular thing or device when it is on the network?
Well, thanks. Teri Takai, thanks so much for taking the time
It's been
here.
fun.